The Alchemist of Whispers. Chapter 1. The Lost Library of Oakhaven. The rain in the town of Oakhaven never just fell. It whispered. It washed over the cobblestone streets, tapped on the high glass windows of the grand library, and kept the townsfolk inside their warm houses. Inside the library, the air smelled of old paper, vanilla, and dried lavender. Julian had spent 5 years working as the assistant librarian, but he felt like he belonged to another century. While others used modern digital tablets to read the news, Julian preferred the heavy, leather-bound books that sat on the top shelves, covered in dust. He knew the location of every book, from ancient geography maps to forgotten poetry. One cold evening, just 10 minutes before closing time, Julian noticed something unusual. A thin trail of water led from the front door directly to the history section at the very back of the room. He followed the wet footprints, expecting to find a careless teenager or a wet dog. Instead, he found a book pulled halfway out from the shelf. It was an old book, but it had no title on the spine. When Julian pulled it out, a small silver key fell out from between the pages and landed on the wooden floor with a sharp metallic ring. Julian picked up the key. It was cold, surprisingly heavy, and shaped like a crescent moon. He opened the book to the first page. There was no introduction, only a single sentence written in dark green ink. The truth is not spoken. It is heard only when the world is completely silent. Intrigued, Julian turned the page. The rest of the book was empty, except for the very last page, which contained a detailed, hand-drawn map of the Whispering Woods, a dark, dense forest located just outside the town borders. A red cross was marked near a place called the Sunken Tower. Suddenly, the library lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Julian's heart beat faster. He squeezed the silver key tightly in his hand. When the lights came back on a few seconds later, he felt a strange determination. This wasn't just a book, it was an invitation. Chapter 2. Into the Whispering Woods. The next morning, Julian woke up before the sun. He packed a sturdy leather bag with a flashlight, a notebook, 2 apples, and the mysterious silver key. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. The townsfolk always said that the Whispering Woods were dangerous because people often lost their sense of time inside them. But Julian felt a pull he couldn't ignore. The entrance to the forest was guarded by giant oak trees that looked like old men frozen in time. As soon as Julian stepped past the first row of trees, the sounds of the town, the distant cars, the morning bells, the barking dogs, disappeared completely. The forest was unnaturally quiet. He pulled out a photocopy of the map he had made the night before. Following the lines on the paper, he walked for hours. The deeper he went, the stranger the forest became. The leaves on the trees weren't just green. They had veins of silver that seemed to glow faintly in the shadows. By afternoon, his legs were tired, and his doubts began to grow. "Am I chasing a ghost?" he muttered to himself. Right at that moment, he heard a sound. It wasn't the wind, and it wasn't an animal. It sounded like a soft, melodic laugh. He turned around quickly, but saw no one. "Who's there?" Julian called out, his voice echoing through the trees. "You are looking for the tower, but you are walking the wrong way," a voice replied from above. Julian looked up. Sitting on a thick branch of a silver-leafed tree was a young woman wearing a long gray coat and heavy boots. She had sharp green eyes and a notebook tied to her waist with a leather strap. She jumped down gracefully, landing on the soft moss without making a sound. "I'm Clara," she said, holding out a hand covered in dirt. "And I've been tracking the anomalies in this forest for 3 months. You don't look like a survivalist. You look like a librarian." Julian hesitated, then shook her hand. "I am a librarian, and I'm looking for the sunken tower." Clara looked at him with renewed interest. "The tower doesn't appear on normal maps. Why do you think you can find it?" Instead of answering, Julian reached into his pocket and showed her the crescent moon key. Clara's eyes went wide. "The alchemist's key," she whispered. "My grandfather wrote stories about this." "Fine, librarian. We go together." Chapter 3: The Sunken Tower. With Clara leading the way, the journey became faster. She knew how to navigate the strange forest, avoiding areas where the fog grew too thick or where the ground became unstable. As they walked, she explained her research. "Decades ago, an alchemist lived in these woods," Clara explained, cutting through a thick branch with a small knife. "He wasn't trying to turn lead into gold. He was trying to capture time and sound. He believed that every secret ever spoken in the world left a physical echo, and he built a machine to collect them." "And the sunken tower?" Julian asked. "It's where he kept the machine, but after he died, the earth swallowed the tower to protect it from people who wanted to use those secrets for power." By late afternoon, they arrived at a large circular clearing. In the center, the ground dipped down significantly, forming a deep, stone-lined crater. At the bottom of the crater, sticking out of the mud like a broken tooth, was the top section of an ancient stone tower. They climbed down carefully into the crater. The air grew colder with every step. At the base of the visible structure, they found a heavy iron door covered in rust and moss. In the center of the door was a lock shaped exactly like a crescent moon. Julian looked at Clara. She nodded, her expression serious. Julian stepped forward, inserted the silver key into the lock, and turned it. A loud, deep click echoed through the valley. The heavy iron door slowly swung inward, revealing a dark, downward staircase that smelled of damp stone and ancient secrets. Chapter 4: The Echo Chamber. They walked down the spiral staircase for what felt like miles, using Julian's flashlight to guide their steps. The walls were covered in strange carvings, symbols of ears, waves, and hourglasses. Finally, the stairs ended, opening up into a massive circular chamber. In the center of the room stood a magnificent machine. It looked like a giant clock, but instead of numbers, it had hundreds of small silver bells, glass tubes, and brass trumpets pointing in every direction. "The echo collector," Clara breathed, stepping forward in awe. In front of the machine was a small stone desk. On the desk lay an open journal, its pages perfectly preserved by the dry air of the chamber. Julian approached the desk and read the final entry, written in the same dark green ink he had seen in the library book. "The machine is complete. It has captured the whispers of kings, the promises of lovers, and the secrets of empires. But I have realized that some things are meant to be forgotten. To activate the machine and hear the truth of the world, one must give up their own deepest secret to the collector." Julian looked at Clara and shared what he read. "It requires a sacrifice of truth," he said softly. Clara walked up to one of the brass trumpets. "I'll go first," she said, her voice shaking slightly. She leaned into the horn and whispered, "I didn't come to this forest just for research. I came because I am terrified of the future, and I thought the past could save me." A small silver bell on the machine rang softly, and a glass tube filled with a glowing blue light. Now it was Julian's turn. He stepped up to the machine. He had lived a quiet, safe life in the library, always reading about others' adventures, but never living his own. He knew exactly what his secret was. He leaned into the trumpet and whispered, "I have spent my whole life hiding behind the words of others because I was too afraid to write my own story." The machine didn't just ring one bell, the entire chamber came alive. Every bell, trumpet, and glass tube began to glow and hum with a beautiful, harmonious sound. The air filled with thousands of soft voices, overlapping like a gentle wave on a beach. It wasn't chaotic. It was the collective voice of human history, sharing love, hope, and wisdom. Chapter 5. Writing a New Chapter. They stayed in the chamber for hours, not speaking, just listening to the beautiful symphony of the world's memories. They learned that the past wasn't something to fear or hide from. It was a foundation to build upon. When the machine finally grew quiet again, the blue light faded into a warm, permanent amber glow. The silver key in the lock turned itself back and popped out into Julian's hand. Julian and Clara climbed back up the stairs and stepped out into the forest. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The whispering woods didn't feel dark or dangerous anymore. They felt alive. "So, what happens now?" Clara asked as they reached the edge of the woods, looking down at the town of Oakhaven. Julian looked at the silver key in his hand, then smiled at Clara. "Now, I think it's time we start writing our own book." They walked back into the town together, leaving the secrets of the past safe under the earth, ready to face whatever the future held.